Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about stochastic processes. So what's a stochastic process? So first of all, what do I mean by stochastic? So stochastic basically means random. We might have discussed in the very first lecture that there are two types of experiments, one which are known as stochastic and others which are known as deterministic. What do I mean by this? Stochastic experiments are those where you cannot, first there are two things, first is you cannot guess the outcome in advance, and secondly if you repeat the experiment you cannot guarantee the same outcome. Okay. For example, a typical example of a stochastic experiment is picking a card without looking from a deck of cards. So okay, I get say ace of spades, but even if I put it back next time I can't be sure that I will get the same card. I may get something else, I may get the same card, anything is possible. Whereas deterministic experiments are those where when you repeat an experiment you are going to get the same outcome. Okay, for example, if you repeat an experiment to decide say chemical components of a certain drug, you are going to get the same chemical components every time you run the experiment, as long as your sample is pure and the tests are accurate. So those will be deterministic experiments. So what do I mean by stochastic process? So we have seen what are random variables. If I go on observing random variables for say a long time, and if I record their values on every day, let's say, then that forms a sequence of random variables. Okay. So suppose x1 is say value of maximum temperature on day 1. Suppose I consider today as day 1. So maximum temperature at Pune today is my x1. x2 will be maximum temperature at Pune tomorrow. x3 would be maximum temperature in Pune day after tomorrow, and so on. If I go on continuously observing, then I get a sequence of random variables. Why each of them is random? Because suppose today's maximum temperature is 41.1 degrees Celsius, but we know this is not the only possible value. Okay, it could have been 42, it could have been 39, it could have been 37. All these values were possible, but we ended up getting this particular value today. Okay. So in theory x1 can take many, there are many possible values of x1. Similarly for x2, x3, etc. So each xi is a random variable and I am observing many of them sequentially. So this sequence of random variables is actually known as a stochastic process. Okay. Now generally what we do is this indices denote either the time or some such thing. Okay, so this is coming from index set, some fixed index set. So here it is day 1, day 2, etc. So it is 1, 2, 3. It could be hours, say first hour, second hour, etc. Or it could be say shifts. So first shift, second shift, third shift. Then next first shift we call it as say fourth shift, and so on. Okay. So these are index sets. And there is another concept associated with a stochastic process which is known as state space. So what is a state space? State space is collection of possible values of each xi. Okay. So collection of possible values of each xi. So for example, if I am talking about temperature, maybe interval say 0 to 100 could be my state space. So any value between this is possible. Of course the values near 35, 40 are most probable, but in theory other values are also possible. Okay. Now depending on the type of state space and the type of index set, there are 4 types of stochastic process. So let me write them in the form of a table. So my state space could actually be discrete or continuous. We will see in a minute what do I mean by that. And my time space or the index set could also be either discrete or continuous. So, let me first worry about time. What do I mean by time being discrete or continuous? So, if suppose I am recording things every day, then there is a gap in my observation. So, I record something today, then I record something tomorrow and day after tomorrow and so on. Even if I am recording something per hour, still it is this hour I get one reading, next hour I get another reading, next hour I get third reading and so on. Okay, so the time points are distinct, discrete. Hence, in that scenario, I will say my index set is discrete. On the other hand, if I am continuously observing something, for example, I am sitting in front of an ATM and I am watching that ATM continuously and I am recording whenever some person enters the ATM, I am recording say time of arrival of that person. Then here I am observing things continuously. Okay, so I am not observing say every with a gap. So in that case we will say time is continuous. Is it okay? So here when the time is continuous, my observations are continuous. So the value of time that I record for arrival could be in say minutes, seconds or even milliseconds if I have that precise a watch. Okay, so observations are recorded continuously. Whereas when I talk about discrete time, I have something like per day, per hour, per week, etc. Okay. What about state space? So state space means the possible values of xi's. So if I am talking of xi say temperature, then I know it is a continuous random variable because temperature I can record in even say fractions. So temperature could be 38.734 degrees Celsius. That is possible, right? So in such cases I would say my state space is continuous. Whereas if I am recording something like say counts, for example, if I am recording counts of people visiting an ATM in certain hour, then those counts are discrete. You can't have 14.5 people visiting an ATM. So this becomes discrete state space. Okay. So the Markov chains that we will study will form this part. So there we would consider discrete state space and discrete time. Okay. Then there are cases where you are observing continuously. I gave you an example of ATM. So that is called as Poisson process, where observations are continuous, but what you record is some sort of count. So Poisson process is one of the counting processes where you observe things continuously. Okay, like calls received at a telephone calls received at a call center, or people visiting ATM, or vehicles passing through a certain square, etc. Okay. There are other types of stochastic processes like birth process or a death process, where you record birth or deaths of people, not necessarily people, animals, bacteria, anything. So they also are continuous time because you observe that population continuously and you record how many individuals have been born by that time. So you are recording count, so it is discrete state space. Okay. Then if I record the example that I discussed right now, so maximum temperature per day, that comes under this, because I am recording every day, so only once every day, so I have distinct time points, but temperature can be continuous, so that becomes this. So this is typically known as, in statistics, this comes under time series analysis, where you generally have continuous readings but taken every day or every week or every month, like that. And if I am recording something continuously and the movement, I mean the thing that I am recording also has continuous values, then I am here. So a typical example of this is Brownian motion. So what's a Brownian motion? So suppose I have a container filled with water, okay, and there are some dust particles in it. Okay, there are some dust particles in it, and those dust particles are moving continuously, and they bombard each other, or they bombard the boundary of the glass, and then they keep on moving continuously. And if I am recording, say, their position, I am observing them continuously and I am recording their position, then that becomes an example with continuous state space and continuous time. Because I am observing continuously, it is continuous time, and their positions can be fractional, they can be anywhere, it is not like they jump step 1, step 2, etc. So, it is an example of continuous state space and continuous time set. So, Brownian motion. Actually, a typical example of Brownian motion is stock prices. You might have seen graphs of stock price movements which are something like this. So, stock prices move continuously, and because they are prices which are expressed in rupees and paise, they can take fractional values also. Okay. So, these are 4 major categories of stochastic processes. I hope you can give example of each one of them now. I hope it is clear to you. But as I said, we will be mainly focusing on Markov chains. Okay. So, what is a Markov chain? Markov is name of a scientist, so M has to be capital. Now, you might have seen the game of snakes and ladders. Okay. So, you have many such squares, correct? You have a board where many such squares are recorded. Okay. And then some of these squares have snakes, some of these squares have ladders. Okay. So, suppose there is a ladder which helps you reach here from here, then there is, say, another ladder which helps you reach like this, maybe something like this, and then there are some snakes. So, maybe I have a snake here which brings me down to here. Okay. Then you have maybe a snake here which brings you down here. This is a typical game, right? So, now in this game, what happens? You initially start at this step, right? This is suppose where you are. Now, you throw a die, correct? You throw a die, you get some number, you get, say, you get, say, 4, then you reach 1, 2, 3, 4, you move 4 steps forward and you reach here, correct? Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, if you reach here, you are going to take the ladder and you reach up ahead. Now, what is going to be the probability of reaching this will depend, this probability of reaching here will be 1 by 6, because when you are here, you can throw any one of the 6 numbers. If you get 1, you reach here. If you get 2, you reach here. If you get 3, you reach here. 4, 5, you reach here, and 6, you reach here. Okay. So, probability of reaching here is 1 by 6. Okay. Because it is same as probability of getting 5 when you are here. On the other hand, if you were here, if you are in this position, then you cannot reach here in the next step, because even if you get 6, at the most you can get 6. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can reach only up to here. Okay. So, you will reach somewhere in this or this, one of these 6 steps. You can never reach here. So, probability of reaching this place is 0 if you were here, and it is 1 by 6 if you were here initially. So, on the other hand, where were you before that step does not matter. So, you all started here, fine. So, you reached here directly from here, or you reached here from this step. So, you had 1 and then reached here, or you had 2 and then you reached here, that does not matter. What matters is where you are currently. So, such cases where probabilities of future depend only on the current state and not on the past state is known as Markov chain. Okay. So, let me introduce some notations. So, we said x1 x2 as the observed process. So, x1 x2 dot 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 is a Markov chain if probability of xt equal to a given x1 x2 xt minus 1. So, given the entire past information is same as probability of xt equal to a given just the latest past information. Okay. So, this is a Markov chain if conditional probability of getting a given entire past data is same as conditional probability of getting a given only the latest known value. So, it is exactly like game of snakes and ladders, where you are currently, that matters in deciding about what is the probability of reaching any other point here. Where you were one step before does not matter at all. Okay. So, once you reach here, for example, if you reach here, then you are going to go up irrespective of whether you reached here via a snake or via a ladder or by usual way, nothing matters. Okay. So, this is a Markov chain definition. The future depends only on the present and not on the past. It depends on the past of course, but it depends on the past only through present value. So, if you know present value, then the past values do not matter. Okay. This is the definition of Markov chain. A Markov chain is generally characterized by what is known as an initial distribution and a transition probability matrix. Okay. A transition probability matrix. What do I mean by this? So, let me now consider some easy example. Suppose we are observing vehicles on a road, and suppose the road is not too crowded, at a time only one vehicle passes the road, and we have vehicles of two types. We either have a car or a scooter. Okay. So, any four wheeler I denote by car, any two wheeler I denote by scooter. So, I have cars and scooters, and suppose we observe that what is the current vehicle depends on what vehicle has passed. So, a car is likely to get followed by a car with probability 0.6, this is say 0.4, this is say 0.8, 0.2. What do these values mean? Let me tell you. So, this is actually called as transition probability matrix. So, what do these values denote? This is probability of xt being car given that xt minus 1 was also a car. This probability is 0.6. Okay. So, these are past values and these are current values, or you can call these as current and these as future values. Okay. So, probability of getting a car on the road given that the earlier vehicle was also a car is 0.6. So, probability of getting the current vehicle as scooter given that the earlier vehicle was car will be 1 minus this probability, because these are only two types of vehicles that can come. So, it is 0.4. Okay. Can you see that 0.4 here? Similarly, probability of current vehicle being a car given that the earlier vehicle was scooter is 0.2. You can see that entry in the matrix, and probability of current vehicle being scooter given that earlier vehicle was also a scooter is 0.8. So, you can see here that both these rows add up to 1. Okay. So, this matrix is known as transition probability matrix, TPM. Okay. Why? Because it gives probability of transition from car to car or car to scooter or scooter to car and scooter to scooter. It gives probability of all transitions. Okay. And why the row sum is 1? Because every row forms a probability mass function, PMF, conditional probability mass function. Okay. Such TPM and along with the initial distribution. Actually, initial distribution is probability of x1, the first vehicle being a car and first vehicle being a scooter. So, suppose we assume that it is say 0.4 and 0.6. Okay. So, suppose we assume that there are 40% of the observations coming, 40% of the vehicles coming to this road are cars and 60% of the vehicles coming to this road are scooters. Okay. So, initial distribution and transition probability matrix uniquely determines the entire Markov chain. Okay. So, how do you simulate this Markov chain? So, simulate means what? So, you start, suppose you first randomly pick up either car or scooter with these probabilities. So, suppose you get scooter first, then the chances of getting the next vehicle as car are 0.2 and next vehicle as scooter are 0.8. So, you pick one randomly with these probabilities. So, what you observe becomes a Markov chain. Okay. So, it could be say scooter, it could be say scooter, car, car, scooter, scooter, car, something like that. So, this observed vehicle sequence becomes the observed Markov chain. Okay. Why are we studying these Markov chains? So, Markov chains have lots of applications. One of them is in genetics. You have sequence ATGC. So, depending on whether you are in the coding part of the DNA or non-coding part of the DNA, you might have different probabilities of having ATGC, and those probabilities might be like Markov. So, whether you have A or T depends on what you have in the previous step, etc. Okay. So, another example of this is in insurance. So, you have there in insurance, in vehicle insurance especially, there is something called as bonus malus system. So, those of you who own two wheelers might know that generally vehicle insurance is issued only for 1 year. Okay. And if you get if you don't make any claim in a given year, then in the next year you generally get no claims bonus or no claims discount. Okay. So, in insurance what they do is they divide people into different discounts levels. So, 0 discount, then this is say 10% discount, this is say 20% discount, and this is suppose 30% discount. Now, initially everyone starts in 0 discount level. If you make no claim in a year, you move to 10% discount. If in that year you do not make any claim, you move to 20% discount. If you are already in a 20% discount zone and you do not make any claim, you move to 30% discount zone. Suppose if you are in a 30% discount zone and you make one claim, then you get some penalty and you move back to say 20% discount zone. If you make 2 claims in a year, then you are penalized severely and you directly move back to say 0 discount zone. So, let me try to draw a picture. So, this is say D0, D1, D2, D3. So, from D0 to D1 you move when there is no claim. Similarly, when there is no claim you move here, no claim you move here, no claim. Okay. If you make 2 claims from D3, then you directly go back to D0. If you make one claim when you are in D3, then you go back to D2. If you make one claim when you are in D2, you move back to D1. If you make 2 claims when you are in D2, you move back to D0, something like this. Okay. So, such processes can be modeled via Markov chains. Okay. So, what do we do with Markov chains? So, now suppose I know the TPM. Okay. So, I know that a person who is currently in discount level 0 will be claim free, will have a claim free year, no claim year with say probability 0.4. Okay. And a person cannot directly jump to D2, that is not allowed. So, this probability is 0, this probability is 0, he cannot directly jump to D3 and he makes one claim, then he stays here. Suppose probability of making one claim is 0.6. If you are in D1, then you can either move to D2 if you do not make any claim. So suppose that chance is 0.6, and if you make a claim, you move to D0. So that chance is suppose 0.4, because you can't stay in D1. You either make claim and you move to D0, or if you don't make claim and you move to D2. So this probability is 0. Similarly, you cannot jump to D3, so this probability is 0. If you are already in D2 and you don't make any claim, you move to D3. Suppose that probability is say 0.5. If you make one claim, you move to D2. That probability is suppose 0.4. If you make two claims, you move to D0. That probability is suppose 0.1. Similarly, if you are in D3, with no claim, you stay in D3, right? So that probability is suppose 0.5 again. With one claim, you move to D2. So let's say 0.4, and with two claims, you move to D0. So this becomes TPM. Now how do I use this TPM? Suppose I have a person who is currently in D2, okay, so his current status is D2. So what are the chances that after 2 steps he is in D3? I want to compute this, okay. What are the chances that after 2 years the person lands up in 30% discount zone? So how do I compute this probability? Currently is in D2. So what are possibilities? And final state I want D3. So from D2, where can he go? From D2 he can either go to D3, or he can go to D1, or he can go to D0 also. So from D2 he can go to either D3, D1 or D0 at time point 1. This is time point 0 and this is time point 2. So these are 3 possible ways, okay. So this probability I will get by adding probabilities of these 3 possible routes, okay. So what is the probability of first route? What is my first route? D2, D3, D3. So this means probability of D3 given D2, and you stay in D3. So D3 given D3. This is probability of first route. For second route, it will be D1 given D2 and D3 given D1. Correct? D1 given D2, D3 given D1. And for the third route, it would be D0 given D2 and D3 given D0. Now D3 given D2. So probability of D3, given that you are starting from D2, is 0.5 from this matrix. Okay. So I write this as 0.5, and then D3 given D3 is again 0.5. So 0.5 into 0.5 plus, now probability of D1 given D2. So probability of reaching D1 from D2 is this, that is 0.4, but probability of D3 given D1, so probability of D3 from D1 is actually 0, okay. So this is 0. Similarly, probability of D0 given D2. So probability of D0 given that you are coming from D2 is 0.1, this entry, and D3 given D0. So you are in D3 from D0, this probability is 0. So I have 0 again. So my answer is just the first probability, that is 0.25. So if you are currently in D2, then chances of you being in 30% discount zone in 2 years is 1 by 4, 0.25, that is 1 by 4. Okay. This is how you estimate different transition probabilities in a Markov chain. Okay. How are they useful? So insurance company, before deciding the discounts, would like to know that in the long run, how many people will be in the highest discount zone, how many people will be in the lowest discount zone, and so on. So that's where we need limiting or stationary distributions of this Markov chain. Okay. So the 2-step probability, so what I computed here is probability of going from D2 to D3 in 2 steps. Okay. So, this is actually called as 2-step transition probability. Okay. 2-step transition probability. So, one way to compute this is evaluating all possible in between steps and taking sum over that. But if you feel that is too complicated, then in general, if you want n-step transition probability, what you can do is you can simply compute nth power of your TPM. Okay. But when I say power, I mean the matrix product. Okay. So, it is P into P into P n times. It is not simply power of individual elements. So, if you actually compute P square and if you then try to locate probability of transition from D2 to D3 in P square, that would actually be same as 0.25. Okay. So, that is a homework. Try to compute P square with this P. You all know matrix multiplication. So, try to compute P square with this P and see if the entry corresponding to transitions from D2 to D3. So, D2 to D3 means this, I mean entry with third row and fourth column. So, check if that entry turns out to be 0.25. Now, what happens is when I compute P raised to n for some well behaved Markov chains, I will not go into what is meant by well behaved, but for some nice well behaved Markov chains, generally when you compute P raised to n, all your rows tend to look similar. Okay, all your rows tend to have almost same entries. What does it mean? It means that when you are talking about what happens after n steps, this initial state does not matter. So, from where you are coming, that does not matter. What matters is only the final stage. So, where you are reaching. So, such probabilities are known as limiting probabilities. Okay, limiting probabilities. And in a well behaved Markov chain, these limiting probabilities are same as what are known as stationary probabilities. So, if you compute limiting probabilities for such a chain, then they would give you a long run proportion of people being in no discount zone, 10% discount zone, 20% discount zone and 30% discount zone. Okay. So, try to compute P raised to n for this and see for large n like 100 or 200, do you get almost constant entries. So, if you get say 0.5, 0.500 in every row, then that would mean that in the long run 50% people will be in discount 0 zone, 50% people will be in 10% discount zone and almost no one will be in 20 or 30% discount zone. Okay, if you get that. But of course, for this matrix you are not going to get this as answer. So, homework is try to compute P raised to n and see if you get every row to be identical, and that will generally give you the probability of being in each state in the long run. These are known as limiting probabilities of a Markov chain. Markov chains, as I said, have lots of applications. One of the applications I told you in genetics. Then I also discussed some applications of counting processes, Poisson processes, etc. Some of you might have heard of Bayesian statistics. So, in Bayesian statistics also there is something called as MCMC, Monte Carlo Markov chain, where you use techniques from Markov chain and Bayesian theory for estimation in problems where traditional statistical techniques do not work. Okay. So, even in phylogenetic analysis, so when you are trying to track ancestor of a particular species, there also Markov chains can be used, or there also MCMC techniques can be used. Okay. So, let me stop here. Please try to compute P raised to n for this particular TPM, and also try to verify by computing P square whether you get this same probability or something else. Okay. Thank you.